On our wedding day, Ethan's childhood friend, Emily, who has a heart condition, deliberately stopped her medication and attempted suicide to prevent our marriage. She was rushed to the emergency room, and Ethan, being her attending physician, hesitated, clearly torn about leaving. I graciously told him to go ahead, assuring him it was fine. In our previous life, despite his hesitation, Ethan stayed and went through with the wedding. However, shortly after, Emily passed away. Filled with resentment, Ethan neglected me and our daughter, treating Emily's child as his own. When our daughter was caught in a fire, he prioritized Emily's child, even transferring all his assets to Emily's parents and child. This time, I wanted to give him a chance, but why did he regret it now? The atmosphere at the wedding was heavy. Ethan, dressed in a suit and wearing the groom's boutonniere, received a call. His expression darkened, as though the celebration wasn't about him. "Emily's having a heart attack. I need to go," he said urgently, removing the boutonniere as he left. While walking out, he was already on the phone, saying, "I'm on my way now." He hung up, took off his wedding ring, discarded his jacket, and hurriedly drove away. I had lost count of how many times Emily used her heart condition to summon Ethan away. If it weren't for my pregnancy, Ethan would never have agreed to marry me. Every time I brought up marriage, he would refuse, saying, "Emily's sick. I have to take care of her." I never understood why our marriage had anything to do with Emily's health. After he left, I walked up to the wedding stage, took the microphone, and announced that the wedding was canceled. I told the guests to treat the occasion as a casual gathering and enjoy the food. Then, I removed my cumbersome wedding dress and veil, feeling a wave of relief. In the past, whenever Ethan and Emily were alone, I would bombard him with 10 texts within an hour. But not anymore. I didn't argue or make a scene when he left. After the wedding was called off, I went to the hospital to schedule an abortion. If Ethan didn't want this child, I wouldn't use it to tie him down. Besides, in our previous life, our child suffered too much. She was severely burned in a fire, with over 70% of her body scarred. I called Ethan to inform him about canceling the wedding and my decision to terminate the pregnancy. "Let's separate," I said. When he answered, his furious voice cut through. "Madeline, what the hell is your rush? Emily's in the operating room right now. If you had a shred of decency, you wouldn't have picked her worst moment to get married." He hung up before I could explain. Standing outside the operating room, a doctor handed me the consent form. "Are you sure you don't want the child? Have you discussed this with your husband?" I nodded, confirming my decision. In our past life, Ethan stayed to marry me, but after Emily's death, he acted as if nothing had changed. However, after her funeral, he brought Emily's 4-year-old daughter, Chloe, home and had her call him Dad. He bathed, dressed, and even braided Chloe's hair himself. Chloe harbored hostility toward me, calling me a bad woman who had killed her mother. Despite being pregnant, maternal instincts made me pity the little girl who had lost her mother. I didn't hold her resentment against her. On the day I was due, Chloe pretended to be kind and asked me to take her to Disney. Thinking she had finally accepted me, I took her. Despite being heavily pregnant, she insisted on having ice cream and went to ride the carousel alone. But moments later, she vanished. Terrified, I called Ethan repeatedly. He arrived in a hurry. He gripped my wrist tightly. "Where's Chloe?" I sobbed as I tried to explain. She said she wanted to ride the carousel and told me to get her ice cream. I told her I'd stay with her and we'd get it later. But she insisted, crying and screaming until I went to buy it. Ethan's fury erupted. "She's just a little kid. How could you leave her alone like that? Do you honestly think this was intentional on her part? Could you live with yourself if something happened to Chloe? Don't expect me to forgive you if she gets hurt." His gaze darkened as it fell to my swollen belly. His expression filled with anger and disgust. After searching for an entire day and night, Chloe was finally found near a dumpster in an abandoned factory. Her tear-streaked face looked pitifully identical to Emily's. Ethan rushed over, scooping her into his arms as she burst into sobs. "Daddy, I was so scared," she cried. "Don't worry. Daddy's here." Ethan comforted her gently, holding her close. Then he turned to me, his expression cold and accusing. Madeline, you're about to be a mother yourself. How can you be so heartless? Wasn't it enough for you to have caused Emily's death? Chloe, sniffling, glanced at Ethan and whimpered. Daddy, don't blame Auntie. It's my fault. I won't ask for ice cream again. Ethan's eyes softened slightly, but his voice was sharp as he spoke again. Chloe, she's just upset because you accidentally broke her bracelet this morning. But Madeline, he said, his tone growing colder as he faced me. It was just a bracelet. Did you really need to lash out and abandon her over something so trivial? I felt my entire body tremble with rage and grief. Ethan, that bracelet was one of the few things my parents left me. It was all I had of them. I cried, but Ethan just sneered. They're dead. What's the point of holding on to something like that? Those words chilled me to the core. Still, guilt over how I had treated Chloe earlier led me to agree to her request to go to the amusement park. I thought taking her there would make things right. But as I glanced at Chloe perched smugly on Ethan's shoulder, the smirk she directed at me was full of defiance and mockery. From that day forward, Ethan never left Chloe alone with me. He even hired bodyguards and a nanny to ensure her safety. If I got within a few feet of her, the bodyguards would step in, their watchful eyes silently warning me to stay away. Ethan acted as if I were some sort of threat, going to extreme lengths to shield Chloe. Every holiday, instead of spending it with me, he would take Chloe to visit Emily's parents. On the day I went into labor, it coincided with Chloe's birthday. That morning, Chloe stood at the top of the stairs and gave me a chilling smile, one that sent shivers down my spine. It didn't feel like a child's smile. It was unsettling, almost malevolent. Then, without warning, she lunged at me, shoving me forcefully. I lost my balance and fell hard to the ground, my belly slamming against the floor. Pain shot through me so sharply I couldn't even scream. The bodyguards, having witnessed the collision, immediately rushed to Chloe's side to protect her. Their cold, robotic stare sent a clear message. I was the problem. Help me, please. I managed to gasp, clutching my abdomen as blood pooled beneath me. Chloe clung to one of the bodyguards and said sweetly, Uncle, take me to Daddy. I'm scared. The bodyguards, following Ethan's strict orders, ignored my pleas. One glanced at me indifferently before escorting Chloe away. My vision blurred as I dragged myself, bleeding and in excruciating pain, back to my room to grab my phone. Alone in the empty house, I dialed for an ambulance. The villa was far from the city, and rain poured heavily outside. It was rush hour, and traffic made it impossible for the ambulance to arrive quickly. When I called again, desperate for help, a cold voice on the other end replied, Sorry, ma'am. Ethan said there's no need to waste resources. He mentioned your due date isn't until next month. I screamed in agony. I'm in premature labor. Desperate, I called Ethan, gasping. I'm about to give birth. He scoffed, his voice filled with disdain. Don't play these tricks. I know your due date isn't until next month. Do you really think I don't see through your games? He assumed I was lying to stop him from celebrating Chloe's birthday. Alone in the villa, I endured an entire day and night of labor, using only water, a cloth, and scissors. I delivered my own baby. The moment my child's cries filled the air, I couldn't stop my own tears from streaming down. It wasn't until the next morning, when the housekeeper discovered me in that state, that I was rushed to the hospital. When Ethan's colleague finally saw me in the delivery room, Ethan had no choice but to believe I had truly given birth. But when he arrived at the hospital, his first words were not of concern but an accusation. Did you plan this on purpose? Did you make sure our daughter and Chloe would share the same birthday so they'd have to compete for attention? I looked at him with a blank expression. Ethan, Chloe pushed me. That's why I went into premature labor. His cold, dismissive eyes told me he didn't believe a word I said. Do you really think I'd fall for that? Save your lies. I suggested he check the villa's security footage, but Ethan refused. He had already decided I was at fault and wouldn't even bother verifying the truth. Shortly after our child's birth, Ethan formally transferred all his assets to Chloe and Emily's parents, claiming it was to ensure Chloe's future. His indifference broke what little hope I had left. I filed for divorce. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his gaze burning with anger as he growled. You can't even handle this little bit of suffering? Let me tell you something, Madeline. I'll make sure you and your daughter are tormented for the rest of your lives. If it weren't for you forcing me into this marriage, Emily would still be alive. Years passed. My daughter turned 4, and Chloe was 8. One day, Chloe convinced my daughter to go out and play with her, only to abandon her in a desolate forest. Chloe came home crying, Daddy, what if something happens to my sister? She's lost. Ethan's immediate response wasn't worry but comfort. It's not your fault. She's just being mischievous. When my daughter was finally found, she was hiding inside a hollow tree. Her face was scratched. Her hands were bleeding from splinters, and her clothes were filthy with mud. I held her tightly as she cried, her small body trembling. Mommy, I was so scared, she sobbed. Chloe ran up to us and began to cry loudly, as if trying to overshadow my daughter's pain. From that day forward, I refused to let Chloe and my daughter be alone together. Ethan mocked me for being overprotective. You should be glad your daughter doesn't harm others, he sneered. I ignored his words. If Ethan had been willing to agree to a divorce, I wouldn't have stayed a second longer. But fate always seemed to have more cruel twists in store. One day, a fire broke out in the house. Both Chloe and my daughter were trapped inside. I panicked and tried to run in, but Ethan grabbed my arm. I'll go. You stay here, he said firmly before rushing into the burning villa. When he emerged, he was carrying Chloe. He laid her down safely, then turned to go back inside for our daughter. But by then, the flames had grown too intense. Without professional firefighters, it was impossible to re-enter. When my daughter was finally rescued, her body was covered in severe burns. She cried out in pain every day, her small voice filled with anguish. I stayed with her in the sterile hospital room until the day she passed away. I couldn't bear the heartbreak and fell gravely ill myself, dying not long after. But then, I woke up. It was the day of the wedding again. This time, I knew better. I wouldn't marry Ethan, and I wouldn't let my child endure such a miserable fate. Because I loved her, I couldn't allow her to be born into this torment again. After my surgery, the doctor reminded me to avoid cold foods and take care not to catch a chill. I nodded silently and left. Back at the apartment Ethan and I shared, I packed my belongings swiftly, including all my important documents. Before leaving, I sent Ethan a message. I've moved out. As I dragged my suitcase downstairs, I ran into Ethan. He looked surprised to see me, his face still tense from whatever had occupied him. Where are you going? He asked, his tone laced with disbelief. I told him I was moving out. He nodded absent-mindedly, saying, Emily is still in the hospital. I'm just grabbing some clothes to take back there. I'll be staying at the hospital for the next few days. Do whatever you want. With that, he left in a hurry. He thought I meant I was moving to the new house, but I didn't bother to correct him. He wouldn't have cared enough to listen anyway. Watching Ethan's hurried, anxious figure disappear, I took a deep breath. When had he ever shown that kind of urgency for me? After the miscarriage, my lower abdomen still ached faintly. While picking up some medication at the hospital, I unexpectedly ran into Ethan. He had just finished a surgery, and his exhaustion was evident. His eyes were bloodshot, and his face was pale. The moment he saw me, he frowned and approached quickly. Madeline, why are you here? His tone was tense, as if worried I had come to cause trouble for Emily. Go home, he said urgently. Just then, Ethan's colleague, Dr. Jacob Joe, rushed over and called out, Madeline, remember to keep your wound dry. In my previous life, after Jacob sent the ambulance for me, he had apologized profusely and even voluntarily stepped down from his position to help take care of me during my recovery. He had shown more care than Ethan ever did as a husband. I would never forget how Jacob had supported me during my most difficult moments. I smiled at Jacob and nodded. Thank you. I will. Ethan looked like he wanted to ask me something, but before he could speak, a patient hurried over and pointed toward Emily's room. Dr. Spencer, your wife is having heart trouble again. You need to check on her. Those words hung in the air like a heavy weight. Both Jacob and Ethan turned to look at me simultaneously. Ethan opened his mouth. She's not my. But I cut him off. I'm leaving now. I turned and walked away. ignoring the commotion behind me. On my way out, an elderly woman suddenly grabbed my hand and asked, "Young lady, are you married? Do you have a partner?" I shook my head and said, "No." Ethan, who had been frozen in place, snapped his gaze toward me, startled. Before he could say anything, I left quickly. I felt relieved, once again thankful that I had never registered my marriage with Ethan. Back home, Jacob called me, "Madeline, remember, no spicy food after a miscarriage. And be careful not to let your wound get wet." He hesitated for a moment before asking cautiously, "Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead," I replied. His tone was careful, almost hesitant. "Did you and Ethan register your marriage? Was the wedding finalized?" I didn't know why Jacob was suddenly curious about this, but I answered truthfully, "No, the wedding was canceled, and we didn't register." Jacob seemed to let out a small sigh of relief and muttered softly, "That's good." For a moment, I wondered if I had misheard. Not long after Emily was discharged from the hospital, Ethan called me, "Madeline, Emily's out now. I'd like her to move into the house. Are you okay with that?" I froze for a moment before replying, "Sure. Do whatever you want. It's your house anyway. What does it have to do with me?" I hung up before he could respond. In the past, even the slightest hint of affection between Ethan and Emily would have made me jealous, let alone having her move into our home. When Ethan and I first started living together, Emily constantly showed up at our place. She wore my slippers, changed into my pajamas whenever I was away on business trips, and lounged in our bedroom during the day while Ethan was at work. When I returned and saw her there, I demanded she leave. She pouted and hid behind Ethan, who sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Madeline, I think of Emily as a sister. What's the big deal about a sister staying at her brother's house? Stop being jealous over nothing." I was hurt, but Ethan dismissed me impatiently. "If you can't handle it, then you can move out." I thought the call had ended then, but it hadn't. Ethan's voice came through the line again, filled with uncertainty. "Do you really mean it doesn't matter?" I laughed lightly, thinking, exactly, what does it have to do with me? It's your house. After all, when Ethan ran off without hesitation on our wedding day, I had already announced the cancellation of the wedding and decided not to register our marriage. As far as I was concerned, we were both single now. Ethan emphasized his words, his tone deliberate and sharp. "Madeline, don't speak in anger. Emily is sick, and I can't just leave her alone. She's like a sister to me." Calmly, I replied, "Sure. In my previous life, after getting pregnant and marrying him, I had quit my job. This time, without a marriage or a child tying me down, I continued working smoothly. So, when my manager asked if I was willing to transfer to South City for a promotion, I accepted without hesitation. I had no reason to stay. My parents passed away when I was 18, leaving me without family or attachments here. After work, I went to a company dinner with my colleagues. By chance, I spotted Ethan at a nearby table, also having dinner with his coworkers. When I went to the restroom, I ran into him in the smoking area. Our eyes met briefly, and I continued walking. On my way out, I was surprised to see him waiting for me at the door. I smiled politely and nodded, but he grabbed my arm. "Why didn't you say hello to me?" he asked. I looked at him, confused. Before I could respond, some people called out to him from the private room, "Ethan, Emily is looking for you." Emily poked her head out of the room, her voice sweet and clingy. "Ethan, why are you taking so long?" Our eyes met, and Emily's face lit up with a seemingly innocent smile. "Madeline, you're here too," she chirped, walking toward me. Seeing her made me feel nauseous. Her face reminded me of her daughter, and I couldn't suppress the disgust and chill that ran through me. Despite this, Emily smiled warmly. "Madeline, why don't you come in and join us? These are all Ethan's coworkers." I declined with a slight shake of my head. The sight of her alone was unbearable. During our relationship, when Ethan and I first lived together, Emily often showed up unannounced. She wore my slippers, borrowed my clothes when I was away, and even made herself at home in our bedroom. When I told her to leave, she would hide behind Ethan, pouting. Ethan would sigh in exasperation. "She's like my little sister. What's wrong with her staying here? Stop being so jealous. I was hurt but never knew how to respond. Ethan's patience with me wore thin. If you can't handle it, then move out, he said. Once, I accidentally overheard him on the phone. He asked someone, "Do you really think this doesn't bother her?" That moment still lingered painfully in my memory. During those days, I tried to be a supportive partner. I would bring Ethan lunch at the hospital, but he always turned me away. Why are you here? This is a hospital, not a place for random visits. He'd say coldly, I'm bringing you food. I replied, trying to ignore his tone. He sneered, I don't need it. Stop hanging around here. It's disruptive and reflects poorly on me. I'm busy and don't have time for this. His words stung deeply. I couldn't understand why it was inappropriate for me, his girlfriend, to visit him. After that, I never went to the hospital again. Yet, Emily often posted about her visits on social media. One post showed her sitting in Ethan's car, small cakes in hand. The caption read, I said I wanted these, and he bought them for me. If it weren't for her posts, I would have never known Ethan could be so considerate. Another post a few days later showed her at the hospital with Starbucks coffee and cake. He works so hard. I'm here to brighten his day. Ethan had scolded me for bringing him lunch but seemed perfectly fine with Emily showing up with treats. Feeling hurt, I asked him once, why is it okay for Emily to visit you at work, but not me? He frowned, clearly irritated. It's not the same. Emily doesn't cause me trouble. It was no surprise that many of Ethan's colleagues thought Emily was his girlfriend. Their closeness made it easy for people to misunderstand. At the dinner, a few of Ethan's coworkers came out of the private room and called him. Ethan, your wife is still waiting. My colleagues, noticing the exchange, turned to me and asked jokingly, is that your husband? I glanced at Ethan and replied flatly, no, none of my coworkers recognized him because, on our wedding day, he had left in such a rush that they never got the chance to see him. As the evening wound down, Ethan sent me a message. Let's head back together tonight. His tone was assertive, leaving no room for refusal. In the underground parking lot, I suddenly remembered the apartment Ethan bought before the wedding. It was listed under both our names as a joint purchase. Now that the wedding was off, we'd need to discuss what to do with it. To avoid any public confrontation in front of his colleagues, I reluctantly got into his car. As I approached the car, Emily stood in front of the passenger seat door. Ethan quickly explained, Emily gets carsick easily. You should sit in the back. I hadn't intended to sit in the front, but their eagerness to secure their arrangement felt almost too much. The car's heater was on high, making the interior uncomfortably warm. Emily kept glancing at me through the rearview mirror, her lips curling into a subtle smile. Her hand rested casually in her pocket, where the wedding ring Ethan and I had planned to exchange likely was. I reached into my bag and pulled out the red velvet box containing the ring. Emily turned around, her face lighting up with curiosity. Madeline, your wedding rings are so beautiful. Can I try it on? Her voice was sweet but carried an underlying smugness. Ethan glanced at me through the rearview mirror, his expression tense, as though he feared I might refuse. I smiled and nodded. Sure, if you like it, you can have it. Ethan slammed on the brakes, jerking the car to a sudden stop. He turned around, his eyes filled with confusion and disbelief. Madeline, this is our wedding ring. I shrugged indifferently. I know. Ethan frowned, his face clouded with a mix of emotions. Then why would you give it to Emily? He seemed about to say more, but we had already arrived at the apartment. Ethan brought Emily upstairs while I waited by the entrance. When he came back down and saw me standing there, he asked, Aren't you coming inside? I shook my head. I'll wait here. There's something we need to discuss. Ethan stopped in his tracks, confused. What is it? Our wedding is canceled, and we didn't register our marriage. What should we do with the apartment? Since we bought it together, we need to figure out the ownership. Do you want to refund me my half? Or should I refund you? Either way, I'd like to keep the property. He stared at me, completely stunned. Madeline, what's gotten into you? You've been acting so strange tonight. Even your colleagues didn't know how to answer when they asked about us. Why did you deny our relationship? Is it because I didn't attend the wedding? His bewildered tone made me laugh. Ethan, didn't your colleagues also mistake Emily for your wife? Besides, you didn't show up for our wedding, and we didn't register our marriage. What relationship do we even have? Ethan rubbed his temples, sighing deeply. Fine. I'll admit I was wrong about the wedding. Okay. But Madeline, I'm Emily's attending physician. I understand her condition better than anyone else. If I hadn't rushed to her side, she could have died. Saving lives is my responsibility. I couldn't prioritize my personal desires over someone's life. I stayed silent, listening. Ethan and I had met in college. He was the star of the medical school, tall, handsome, and widely admired. During our military training survival exercise, we were allowed to form teams for 3 days and nights. I got separated from my group and lost my way. As night fell, I slipped and tumbled down a hillside. Ethan carried me back up to the main trail, even though it took hours. When the temperature dropped overnight, he took off his jacket and draped it over me. I developed a fever, and he used the only clean towel he had to dampen with water and bring my temperature down. He stayed up all night tending to me until the rescue team arrived. From that moment on, I couldn't help but develop feelings for him. Back at school, we had no further interaction. I silently admired him from afar, gathering bits and pieces of information about his life. When I heard about his breakup, I felt both heartbroken and hopeful. I thought he might have noticed my feelings because, during our senior year, we had an unexpected encounter. One night at a bar, Ethan was sitting alone in the corner, drowning his sorrows. I was with a group of classmates, but my attention kept drifting toward him, pretending not to notice. I stole a glance in his direction, thinking I was subtle. Little did I know, he had noticed me all along. He walked toward me with a glass of wine, leaned in close, and whispered, "Can I?" His lips brushed against mine before I even realized what was happening, and somehow, I found myself nodding. That night, we naturally ended up together. But the passion he showed that evening quickly cooled, replaced by an indifference I tried hard not to notice. I was already too deep in the dream of my one-sided love becoming real to admit the truth. Later, Emily reached out to me. That was when I discovered the reason Ethan had chosen to be with me. It was to get back at her. She had been seeing someone else, and he had deliberately sent her a photo of us kissing to provoke her. Seeing the chat logs Emily shared with me made my heart ache. So easy to fall in love, but letting go is another story entirely. Emily left the country, got married, had Chloe, divorced, and eventually returned. By then, Ethan was even more unwilling to marry me. If it weren't for my accidental pregnancy, he never would have agreed. After Emily came back, she didn't even need an excuse like heart disease to call him away. A casual phone call was enough to make him drop everything. Sitting across from Ethan now, in this second lifetime, I could no longer feel any love for him. Calmly, I said, "Ethan, I'm not causing drama. I just don't want to marry you anymore." He stared at me for a long moment before sneering. "Fine, but don't come running back to me later." He clearly thought I was joking. After all, every time I said I wanted to end things, I was the one who ended up apologizing and begging to reconcile. This time, I returned the ring and arranged to transfer the apartment entirely to him. As we stood at the doorway after finalizing the paperwork, Ethan smirked mockingly. "And what about the child? Madeline? Whose responsibility is that?" The mention of the baby brought a brief, heavy silence. Reflexively, my hand moved to my abdomen. "I already terminated the pregnancy," I said evenly. Ethan's expression darkened, his eyes turning cold and menacing. "What did you just say? You got rid of the baby? How could you be so heartless?" "Heartless?" I replied, my voice steady. "I'm not as heartless as you, leaving your own daughter to die in a fire." Without waiting for his response, I turned and walked away. That same day, I booked a flight to South City and accepted my new position. A new city, a new environment. Everything was fresh, and I quickly adapted to living alone. I had been on my own since losing my parents at 18, and solitude was something I had grown used to. But peace never lasts. My calm life was soon disrupted. In my previous life, I used to cling to Ethan, texting and calling him incessantly just to hear his voice, which gave me a false sense of security. after giving birth to my daughter. However, I realized that being near him only brought fear and pain. The memories of her burned body, her fragile frame carried out of the fire, haunted me endlessly. She was so small, enduring such unbearable pain. Yet she tried to comfort me. "Mommy, I'm fine. Don't cry." But when I wasn't there, she would secretly cry in agony. In the past few days, Ethan had been bombarding me with messages. He had never been the type to message me before, so I had almost forgotten to delete his contact. His messages were relentless. "Where are you? Madeline? Did you really terminate the pregnancy?" Late at night, his calls came one after another. His voice was hoarse with anger. "Madeline, where are you? What happened to our child? What happened to our daughter? How did he know it was a girl?" I tried to keep my composure. "It's late. If there's something important, we can talk tomorrow." I hung up on him and went to bed. The next day at work, I couldn't focus. My thoughts were scattered, and I felt uneasy. That evening, Jacob called me. "Madeline, do you still have feelings for Dr. Spencer?" His choice of words surprised me. Referring to Ethan so formally felt odd. He was Ethan's junior colleague, someone who had always admired Ethan as a role model and referred to him respectfully as Brother Ethan. But now, his tone was distant, almost formal. It felt odd. I told him plainly, "We've broken up. I don't like him anymore." Jacob's next words shocked me. "Madeline, you and he are not a good match. Please, whatever you do, don't marry him." I had a dream. In the dream, Emily died, and you had a daughter. But Ethan always favored Emily's child, again and again, to the point it led to your and your daughter's deaths. I even dreamed that you went into premature labor because of him. Hearing this, I felt a lump in my throat. My voice trembled slightly. "Thank you, Jacob." After a long pause, he added, "I'm sorry, Madeline. In the dream, it was my fault you went into premature labor. I almost caused you serious harm. Please forgive me." His words froze me. That wasn't just a dream. It was the reality of my previous life. I was left speechless. Does this mean we've both been reborn? It wouldn't be hard for Ethan to find me if he wanted to. With his resources and connections, locating me was only a matter of time. And sure enough, as I left work, I saw him standing outside my office building, his bloodshot eyes fixed on me, and there was an intensity in his gaze that made me uneasy. It reminded me of the Ethan from my past life, and the memory sent shivers down my spine. I stopped in my tracks, trembling slightly as he called out to me through gritted teeth. Calmly, I asked, "What's the matter? Why did you terminate the pregnancy?" he demanded, his voice shaking with anger. "Didn't you want her? Don't you know how well-behaved our daughter is?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. "That's exactly why. Ethan, you don't deserve a well-behaved daughter. Isn't Emily's daughter calling you dad enough to fulfill your dream of fatherhood?" Ethan's face turned pale, his eyes red and misty. The steady stream of people passing by made me uncomfortable discussing such matters in public. I gestured for us to move to a quieter spot. "Madeline," he said softly, his voice trembling, "let's get married. We can have another child. And this time, we'll make sure to have our daughter again." That's when I knew Ethan had also been reborn. He remembered everything from our previous lives. But how could he have the audacity to bring up our daughter, the one he had essentially condemned to death? I met his gaze, my voice cold. "Ethan, you killed your own daughter. You let your constant favoritism toward Chloe destroy her life. You have no right to call yourself her father." His lips trembled as he paled even further, his tall frame trembling. "You know everything," he whispered, his voice unsteady. I sneered. "Yes, Ethan, I know everything. I've been reborn too. And since you love Emily so much, I'm giving you the chance to be with her." He grabbed my arm, his lips opening and closing as he struggled to find the words. "Madeline, I'm sorry. I know I was wrong. After you died, I investigated everything. Emily didn't die. And I saw the villa's security footage. Chloe pushed you. She caused your premature labor under Emily's orders. They wanted you to die, to take you and our baby with you. Or worse, they planned to let you give birth so Chloe and our daughter would share the same birthday, ensuring I'd always neglect our daughter on that day. They wanted her to hate me, To hate you. Ethan's voice cracked as he continued. Chloe deliberately hid at the abandoned factory during the amusement park trip. It was all orchestrated to make you suffer. She had deliberately abandoned our daughter in the wilderness and set a fire to kill her. The thought of it made me want to tear Emily and Chloe apart piece by piece. But even that wouldn't be enough to quench the hatred in my heart. What shocked me the most was learning that Emily had been alive all along in our previous life. She had been orchestrating everything from the shadows, using Chloe as her pawn. A child as young as Chloe couldn't have done such cruel things without someone guiding her. Hearing all of this filled me with a bone-deep chill. As Ethan spoke, his voice broke with sobs. After you and our daughter died, I was devastated. Once I uncovered the truth, I sent Emily and her parents to prison. I'm sorry, Madeline. It was all my fault. Every time I see the evidence, feels like my heart is being torn apart. Like I can't even breathe. I can only sleep if I'm holding a picture of you and our daughter, sitting by your graves, watching his tears. I felt no sympathy, even with Ethan being reborn. I vowed to never let my daughter suffer the same fate again. Ethan choked out through his tears. You've been reborn, haven't you? That's why you told me to go to the hospital to save Emily without hesitation on our wedding day. You'd already given up on me, hadn't you? And I was so foolish, thinking you were being understanding. His eyes turned red as he cried. I thought you were so thoughtful, but you were just completely disappointed in me. Who could have imagined that the Ethan from my past life would return as well, carrying memories of everything after my death? He clung to my hand, unwilling to let go. Ethan, I don't love you anymore, I said coldly. Do you have any idea how much pain I was in when I gave birth alone? My first pregnancy, my first time giving birth. And it became the start of my tragedy. I delivered our child at home by myself, cutting the umbilical cord with a pair of scissors sterilized in boiling water. I only let myself faint after I heard her cry. She was so small, yet Chloe lured her into the mountains, almost killing her there. And when she went missing, your first reaction wasn't to find her but to comfort Chloe. She was just 4 years old. You never celebrated her birthday, not even once. Yet you celebrated Chloe's birthday every year. You have no idea how disappointed she was. Even as she died, she told me not to cry. She asked me, why is my dad you? I practically screamed as I said those words. The pain I'd experienced couldn't be erased. Even if I didn't love him anymore, the agony of the past still haunted me. Ethan shook his head, his voice hoarse. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. The next day, Ethan left South City. But a month later, he flew back, transferring his position to my city. I had cut off all contact with him. Madeline, please, just look at me. I swear I know I was wrong. I let out a cold laugh. Seeing you makes me sick. Ethan pulled out a file folder. Inside was a notarized document transferring all his assets to me. Madeline, I'm giving you everything I own. Please, take it. I ignored his desperate attempts to make amends. The more he begged, the more afraid I felt. Every time I saw him, my stomach churned with nausea. When he stepped closer to me, I couldn't hold back. I vomited right in front of him. The psychologist told me it was post-traumatic stress disorder. At its worst, even being near Ethan caused my brain to go into oxygen deprivation, and I fainted. After that incident, he never appeared directly in front of me again. Instead, he would stand outside, watching me through a window, not daring to come closer. Emily eventually followed him to South City, but Ethan's once gentle gaze toward her had turned cold and filled with disgust. Get lost, he said, his voice icy. I told Ethan, if you dare come near me again, neither you nor your daughter will have a good life. Soon after, Chloe was no longer able to attend kindergarten. Without Ethan's financial support, her family couldn't sustain their normal lives. Previously, they had lived entirely off of Ethan's money, but since Ethan had transferred all his assets to me, he was left with only his regular salary and no extra funds to spare. I messaged Ethan, offering to return the money, but his reply was simple. I'm sorry. I know the harm I caused you is irreparable. The only thing I can give you now is everything I own. I'm truly sorry. Without financial stability, Emily fell into bad habits, gambling away what little she had. Before long, She accumulated heavy debts and ended up having one of her hands severed as punishment. Her heart condition worsened due to her lack of treatment and her newfound addictions to smoking and drinking, leaving her body completely deteriorated. In her desperation, she begged Ethan for help. Ethan didn't even spare her a glance. His only response was a cold laugh. "Didn't you like to threaten suicide? Now you can die without the effort." Eventually, Emily died a miserable death, consumed by pain. Her parents aged overnight from the stress, and Chloe was sent to an orphanage. After that, I never saw Ethan again. He erected a gravestone in this lifetime for the daughter we lost in the previous one. On the stone, he inscribed "beloved daughter" and sketched an image of her as he remembered her. He often visited the grave, talking to it as if she were there. People whispered that he had gone mad, driven insane by grief and guilt. He had lost his daughter, and in doing so, lost his mind as well. Meanwhile, my life gradually improved. I moved on and rebuilt myself. I donated half of the assets Ethan gave me to a girls' rescue foundation, hoping to honor the memory of our daughter from the past life. When I met Jacob again, he was in South City on a business trip. He was still the same bright and cheerful young man, though now he had become an even more accomplished doctor, surpassing Ethan. "Madeline, I've always felt sorry for what happened to you," Jacob said sincerely. Smiling, I replied, "It wasn't your fault. He was your boss. You didn't have a choice." Jacob had spent both his past and present lives atoning for a single mistake. In our previous life, aside from that one incident, he had always treated me well and shown me respect. Even after what happened, he had done everything he could to apologize and make amends. He truly wanted to be a better person. "Why are you off work so early today?" Nurse Chloe. "I just saw Mr. Lucas come back, looking radiant and all smiles. Something good must have happened. Could it be that your marriage application got approved? Are you planning the wedding feast?" I was about to push open the gate to the courtyard when Sarah, the neighbor picking vegetables next door, spotted me. Facing Sarah's nosy expression, I calculated the timing and replied calmly, "Oh, it's just one of Lucas's friends returning from abroad. No wedding candy for now." Sarah looked a little disappointed. "So, are you and Mr. Lucas getting married before the end of the year? We're all waiting." In my previous life, I was just half a month away from marrying Lucas. But now, I clutched the marriage application hidden in my pocket. Half an hour ago, I realized I had been reborn. The first thing I did was retrieve the marriage application from the office. After brushing off Sarah's questions, I opened the courtyard gate. Lucas was standing right behind it. We came face to face unexpectedly. He was dressed neatly in his work uniform, his broad shoulders, narrow waist, and long legs highlighting his perfect figure. He looked exactly as I remembered. His deep eyes exuded confidence and calmness, with a hint of coldness when they met mine. It took me a lifetime to understand that his coldness wasn't his nature, but stemmed from a deep-seated dislike for me. "How did you know I had a friend coming back from abroad?" Lucas frowned, his probing gaze fixed on me. It seemed he had overheard my conversation with Sarah. Meeting his gaze, I replied calmly, "Didn't you mention it?" Lucas's expression grew more skeptical. "When did I say that?" In my previous life, Lucas's childhood friend, Anna, had also returned today. He had kept it a secret from me until circumstances forced him to introduce her. "You don't remember?" I replied evenly. "If you didn't tell me, how else would I know?" Lucas didn't respond immediately, his gaze scrutinizing me like I was some sort of undercover agent. Seeing my calm demeanor, he seemed to waver, convincing himself that he must have mentioned it without realizing it. Clearing his throat, he said, "Well, I was going to tell you. She's a friend from abroad who doesn't have a place to stay yet. I'm going to help her find one. I won't be back for dinner tonight." I had no intention of cooking for him anyway. "All right, go ahead," I said with a nod. Lucas seemed surprised by how quickly I agreed. I knew why. Lucas was undeniably attractive and, after leaving the military, had become a high school math teacher. He was the center of attention for many women. Naturally, I had always kept a close eye on him. Whenever he went out, I'd ask where he was going and why. Anyone he met, I'd dig into their family background. Over time, He grew annoyed and began sneaking out whenever I wasn't home. Today, he must have planned to do the same. But he didn't expect me to come home early. What are you staring at? Go on. Don't keep your friend waiting, I urged, waving him off. The sooner he left, the sooner I could get on with my own plans. Oh, here, Lucas said unexpectedly, pulling a piece of chocolate from his pocket. In my past life, this hadn't happened. I eyed the chocolate in his hand, guessing he had intended to give it to Anna but, for some reason, was now offering it to me. I don't eat stuff like that. It'll rot my teeth. I refused. I was no longer the girl who would get swept away by his occasional sweetness. I wouldn't forget his dying words to me, Chloe. The biggest mistake of my life was marrying you. I regret it. I hate it. Seeing my rejection, Lucas tried to explain. This is chocolate, not candy. I don't care. Take it to someone who does. I interrupted impatiently, brushing past him to enter the house. In this life, let him and his precious childhood sweetheart live or die as they please. Lucas didn't come home that night. I didn't waste my energy guessing what he and his beloved Anna might be doing. Instead, I stayed up all night, writing my application for employee housing. Early the next morning, I submitted the application. The results would take a few days, so I returned to my job and threw myself fully into work. Time passed quietly, and by mid-morning, I had only 2 or 3 patients left. Suddenly, Lucas burst in, carrying Anna in his arms. His strides were hurried as he pushed his way to the front of the line. Chloe, take a look at my friend. She hurt her leg. Can you stop the bleeding first? I glanced at them briefly. It was surprising to see Lucas, who had always been disciplined and put others first, cutting in line. His face was filled with worry. What are you looking at? Hurry up and check her, he urged, his tone impatient. Following his gaze, I saw Anna's calf exposed, with a shallow scratch. If she had arrived any later, the wound might have already scabbed over. Go to the back of the line, I said calmly. Lucas was stunned. What? Raising my voice slightly, I repeated. I said, go to the back of the line. This time, he heard me clearly. His expression darkened, and his voice lowered. Chloe. I ignored him and continued treating the patient in front of me. Lucas hadn't expected me to treat him so coldly. He reached out and tugged my arm. I looked up sharply. Lucas, you're a teacher. Don't you understand the principle of first come, first served? Or is this how you usually teach your students? He was caught off guard by my words, his face hardening in disbelief. Sensing the tension, Anna intervened softly. Lucas, it's okay. Let's go to the back of the line. Hearing this, Lucas stiffened but eventually helped Anna to the end of the queue. When it was finally Anna's turn, I grabbed some iodine and wiped the wound clean to disinfect it. That's it. Keep it dry and avoid water. Lucas frowned. That's it? Are you done already? What else? I replied flatly. Shouldn't you bandage it? He pressed. I examined Anna's wound again. Sure enough, it had already scabbed over. Unbidden, memories of my past life resurfaced. At 35, after dropping my son off at school, I went to the market and was grazed by a reckless motorbike, leaving a 7-centimeter gash on my calf. Blood poured from the wound. After getting treated at the hospital, my leg was wrapped in so much gauze it resembled a giant rice dumpling. That evening, when Lucas came home from work and learned what had happened, he didn't express concern. Instead, he scoffed. You're so fragile. That little scratch? Back in my day, my comrades and I took bullets and never made a fuss. You're overreacting. Even going to the hospital. What a waste of money. A little alcohol at home would have been enough. At the time, I thought he was just a man who didn't know how to show care. Looking back now, it was clear. It wasn't that he didn't know how to care. It was that I wasn't that person for him. If it needs bandaging, you can do it yourself. Mr. Lucas, my shift is over, and I'm going to eat. I placed the basket of gauze down, ignoring his darkened expression, and left with my lunchbox in hand. Chloe, is that woman Lucas was holding your cousin? My colleague Linda asked as she approached me during lunch. Cousin? What a familiar term. In my previous life, Lucas, to care for Anna while avoiding gossip, had given her a fabricated identity. Publicly, he claimed Anna was my cousin. Naturally, if her future brother-in-law took care of the cousin, no one would think too much of it. Back then, I had been foolish enough to believe that Lucas and Anna were purely like a brother and sister. As a result, I naively accepted the relationship he fabricated, where Anna became my so-called cousin. Mr. Lucas is so good to you, Linda said with a teasing smile. He even extends his care to your cousin. You're truly blessed to be marrying such a thoughtful man. She's not my cousin, I replied flatly. She's just a friend Lucas brought back from abroad. She has no family here. Linda's eyes widened in shock, her mouth gaping as if she could fit an egg inside. It took her a moment to process this information. Oh, well, Mr. Lucas is certainly kind to his friends, she muttered, recovering quickly. Even though this isn't some ancient feudal era, people still tend to make assumptions about men and women in situations like this, especially someone like Lucas, who is already engaged. Carrying an unrelated woman in his arms and rushing into his fiancée's workplace is bound to spark gossip. Even a dog would raise an eyebrow. After Linda walked away, I turned around and saw Lucas standing behind me, his expression dark and unreadable. Once we were alone, he finally spoke. Chloe, I didn't get the chance to tell you before, but my family and Anna's are old friends. We grew up together. When she was 18, her family immigrated overseas due to some circumstances. She's had a rough time these past few years, losing both of her parents. Now that she's back, she has no one here. I had heard this story before in my previous life. Lucas had used it to portray Anna as a vulnerable girl with no one to rely on, hoping to trigger my sympathy and make me accept her as a cousin. I looked at him calmly and asked, "And how does that relate to you telling everyone she's my cousin?" Lucas froze for a moment, caught off guard by my directness. In his eyes, I had no remarkable qualities, but he did acknowledge that I was kind and empathetic, especially toward those with no family, people like Anna. She's like a sister to me, he explained. Since she's back, I feel obligated to look after her on behalf of her parents. But as a man, if people hear that I'm caring for her, it might damage her reputation. So, Chloe, could you? I interrupted him. I don't have a habit of taking in sisters. If you truly consider her your sister, then host a proper ceremony. Set up a few tables and formally acknowledge her as your family in front of everyone. Once people know she's officially your sister, no one will gossip. It was a reasonable suggestion, but Lucas remained silent. After all, in his heart, Anna wasn't a real sister. She was his beloved sister. Despite my refusal, Lucas went ahead and told everyone that Anna was my cousin, just like in my previous life. Within days, he brought her to our home. He explained, "The guest house where Anna was staying isn't safe right now. I'm worried something might happen, so I invited her to stay here for a couple of days." Anna looked at me with her bright, doe-like eyes. "Chloe, I'm really sorry to trouble you like this." I was in the kitchen beating eggs and didn't bother to turn around. "Oh, this is your house. You can bring whoever you want to stay." That's right. I was living in Lucas's house. My parents' home had been destroyed in a flood last year, leaving me with no place to stay. But I wasn't living here for free. I paid rent every month, cleaned the entire house, and even covered the grocery bills. At the time, I thought Lucas and I were bound to get married eventually, so I never calculated the cost or considered whether it was fair. Hearing my indifferent response, Lucas gave me a strange look. Thankfully, things went just as he wanted. Lucas responded with a nonchalant then added, "Are you cooking? Make a little more. Anna will be eating with us at home from now on." I didn't say a word. Lucas must have thought I was sulking. As he led Anna to arrange her room, he specifically reminded me, "Anna doesn't eat onions. Make sure not to add any." Still, I gave him no response. "Lucas," Anna said softly, her voice slightly concerned. "I noticed Chloe didn't look too happy earlier. Maybe I should go back to the guest house. I don't want to cause any trouble." The house wasn't big, so no matter how quietly they spoke, I could hear them clearly. Lucas reassured her, "Don't worry about Chloe. That's just how she is. You're fine staying here. But I heard you two already filed a marriage application. I'd hate for my presence to affect your relationship." Lucas paused for a moment, seemingly reminded of the marriage application we had filed. To be honest, that application hadn't been his idea. At the time, he was having dinner with some leaders from his workplace. They knew about us and felt it was time for Lucas to settle down, so they encouraged him to file it. My guess is that Lucas, thinking he would never see Anna again, reluctantly agreed out of a sense of resignation. But just a few days later, Anna returned. Now, he probably regrets it more than anything. It took him a while to regain his composure. As I carried a bowl of egg noodles back to my room, I glanced through the gap in the door and saw Lucas holding a jar of snowflake cream he had apparently bought at some point. He opened it in front of Anna with a gentle and eager expression. "I heard women love this kind of thing," he said, almost nervously. "I got it for you. See if you like it." That jar of snowflake cream triggered memories of a nightmare from my previous life. Back then, Lucas had been promoted from a teacher to a grade director, earning a decent salary, but he had always been generous and loved lending money to struggling coworkers. Over time, he brought less and less money home, and there were even times when I had to cover for his good deeds with my own savings. Between taking care of his parents and raising our child, I learned to stretch every penny to its limit. As those days dragged on, I slowly forgot how to take care of myself. One night, Lucas came home drunk. After helping him wash up, I struggled to get him into bed. To my surprise, he cupped my face in his hands and stared at me for a long time. I blushed, thinking he might finally be seeing me in a new light. But then he said coldly, "Chloe, why does your face look older than my mother's? So dark and dull. Can't you learn from other women and use some snowflake cream or something?" I was stunned, but before I could respond, he closed his eyes and fell asleep. The next morning, I didn't even go grocery shopping. Instead, I went out looking for snowflake cream, only to realize I couldn't afford it. A single jar cost as much as our family's monthly grocery bill. By the time I could afford it, I was already old. When I finally started using it, Lucas caught me one day, staring at me in the mirror for a long time. "What are you smearing on your face? Do you think it'll make you look younger? Stop acting so ridiculous, or you'll set a bad example for the grandkids," he said, then turned and walked away. Back in the present, Anna hesitated as she examined the jar of snowflake cream. "Thank you, Lucas, but I don't usually use this brand. I prefer imported ones." She handed it back to him dismissively. "Why don't you give it to Chloe? She'll probably appreciate it." Sitting in my room, eating my noodles, I heard the door open as Lucas came in with the jar of cream in hand. He frowned as he saw me. "Why are you eating alone?" I didn't even look up. What's wrong with you?" he asked, his irritation growing. I swallowed the last bite of my noodles and met his gaze. "You told me to cook, but I never agreed to it. Besides, there's only enough food in the kitchen for one person. If you two want to eat, buy your own groceries and cook yourselves." "Chloe, what do you mean by that?" Lucas's brows furrowed deeply. "The meaning is simple," I said calmly. "I'm not your maid. I'm not responsible for your meals, laundry, or anything else." Lucas stared at me, stunned. "What do you mean? Your house and my house? Once the marriage application is approved, we'll be husband and wife. Do we really need to draw such clear lines?" I stood up and looked him straight in the eye. "Lucas, are you sure you actually want to marry me?" It was rare to see Lucas looking uneasy in front of me, but this time, he avoided my gaze. "I wouldn't back out, if that's what you're implying," he said with a slight edge of defensiveness. He wouldn't back out. True enough. But he'd also resent me for it for the rest of his life. "I see Anna as my little sister. I hope you can too," Lucas said, avoiding further eye contact. He placed the jar of snowflake cream on the table and quickly left the room. I glanced at the cream sitting on the table, then put it into a drawer, letting it rest atop the folded marriage application. In this life, neither Lucas nor his snowflake cream would hold any power over me. Not long after, Lucas came back through the door. From the sounds I heard through the wall, it seemed he'd gone to borrow a few eggs from the neighbor, Sarah. Lucas had never cooked before, but for Anna's sake, he fumbled around in the kitchen for quite some time. He even managed to fry her an egg in some creative way. I don't know how it tasted, but Anna ate it with a smile. calling him Brother Lucas. As they ate, they started reminiscing about their childhood, talking about when they were 18 and their families faced sudden hardships that forced them apart. Anna's voice broke with emotion. Lucas, do you remember the promise we made back then? Lucas didn't say he remembered, nor did he say he didn't. He just let out a non-committal through his nose. Then both of them fell silent. I lay on my bed, sinking into memories from my previous life. That so-called promise between Lucas and Anna, a 7-year vow made when neither was married, was something I only discovered after Lucas's death. It was written on a yellowed piece of paper clenched tightly in his hand. I held that scrap of paper in my hand, feeling an indescribable bitterness. My mind replayed the entirety of my life with Lucas, from the very first time we met. It was near the end of the year. Lucas had just returned from his service, carrying his military bag. He walked through the gate with a piece of paper in hand and asked politely, "Excuse me, is this Guohua's home?" I had been drying persimmons in the courtyard when I turned to look at him. He stood tall and broad, and I couldn't think of any words to describe him. My mind went completely blank except for one thought. He's so handsome. You're looking for my older brother? I managed to ask. He's next door, my father said, stepping out before I could reply. Lucas nodded and thanked him, turning to leave. Before he could go, my father called out, "Wait, who are you to Guohua?" "I'm his son, Lucas," he said, turning his head briefly before walking away. After he left, my father noticed I was still standing there in a daze. "Chloe, what are you still looking at?" "He's already gone," he teased. Blushing furiously, I fled back into the house, my father's laughter echoing behind me. That's how Lucas first walked through the gate of our courtyard and into my heart. On an otherwise ordinary morning, becoming Lucas's fiancée happened the following summer. His father had been bitten by a venomous snake while working in the fields. Although he was rushed to the clinic, there was no antivenom available, and treatment was delayed. Lucas was in the middle of teaching a class when he was called back home. He knelt at his father's bedside, listening to his last words. "I only regret not living to see you get married and have children," his father said. "Dad, I already have someone in my heart," Lucas suddenly said, lifting his head. Everyone in the room turned to him in surprise. "It's Chloe, the daughter of Mr. Chin. I want to marry her," Lucas declared firmly. The next moment, all eyes were on me. From the moment Lucas said he had someone in his heart, I had felt a pang of disappointment. But when he revealed it was me, I was overwhelmed with joy. In just 3 seconds, I experienced what it meant to rise from the dust to the clouds. "Uncle, I like Lucas too," I said softly. "I'm willing to marry him," I blurted out without thinking. In that moment, I naively believed Lucas truly cared for me. Looking back now, I realize he only said those words to give his father peace of mind before passing. I had been nothing more than a sacrifice for his sense of filial piety. Later, the antivenom arrived in time from the higher-level hospital, and Lucas's father was saved. After that, Lucas never brought up the topic of marriage again, always using work as an excuse. Later still, when my parents passed away in an accident, he could no longer avoid the engagement. "Lucas, those things we said were just childish talk. Don't take them seriously, and don't let it weigh on you," Anna said softly after a long silence outside the room. Lucas didn't respond. Anna continued, her voice faltering. "Chloe is a good woman. It's clear she likes you. You two are a good match." Her tone weakened noticeably on the last sentence, as if she didn't truly believe her own words. I yawned, closed my eyes, and drifted off to sleep. I didn't know how Lucas replied to Anna, but the next morning when I opened the door, I saw the two of them standing in the courtyard. The morning light bathed the yard in a soft glow. Anna was standing in front of Lucas, helping him adjust his tie. Lucas, being much taller than Anna, bent slightly to make it easier for her. The scene was warm and picturesque, almost beautiful. After adjusting the tie, Anna stepped back and smiled in satisfaction. Lucas stretched his neck awkwardly and asked, "Does it look good?" "Of course. This is how professionals dress abroad for work," Anna replied with a playful arch of her brow. "Wait, don't move. It's a little crooked." Lucas froze in place as Anna reached out to adjust it again. Then, out of nowhere, she leaned in and kissed him lightly on the lips. The unexpected kiss startled Lucas. He instinctively stepped back, bumping into a flower pot, which toppled over with a loud crash. The noise shattered the tranquil morning, and both of them turned to look toward the door. Where I stood, Lucas's expression shifted wildly, as though he was trying to maintain composure but failing miserably. Anna was the first to speak. "Chloe, please don't misunderstand. That was just a greeting custom from abroad." "A greeting custom that involves a kiss on the lips?" Truly, only someone who had spent time overseas could come up with such a bold excuse. I pursed my lips and walked toward them. My natural stern expression must have made Anna nervous because her face turned pale, and she instinctively bit her lip. Pulling my hand out of my pocket, I noticed Lucas quickly step in front of Anna, shielding her. "Chloe, if you have something to say, direct it at me. Don't." He must have thought I was going to hit her. Instead, I took out a dry leaf that had been stuck in my pocket, crumbled it, and let the wind carry it away. Just like my feelings for Lucas. Ignoring Lucas, I glanced at Anna. "Miss Anna, your international customs are quite impressive. But just so you know, Lucas has been dealing with cold sores on his lips for the past few days. Medically speaking, it's a viral infection. You might want to be careful not to catch it." Anna's eyes widened in shock, and I walked away without looking back. The moment I arrived at the clinic, the office director called me over. "Chloe, your request for employee housing has been rejected." "Why?" I asked, confused. "Your quota isn't sufficient," the director replied. In this era, quotas were everything. Without them, it was impossible to get anything done. I was about to plead further when another staff member walked in, interrupting loudly. "Young people these days are so unwilling to endure hardship. Can you believe no one wants to sign up?" The director turned to him. "Still no volunteers?" "Nope," he replied. "It's a tough assignment. But anyone who goes and returns will be in a completely different position." From their vague conversation and my memories of the past life, I suddenly recalled what this was about. The clinic, following higher-level directives, needed to send one medical staff member to the Northwest front line. The moment people heard Northwest, especially during the harsh winter, no one wanted to go. This was clearly an arduous task, and everyone avoided it like the plague. In the past, I also hadn't volunteered, thinking I'd soon be marrying Lucas. In the end, the assignment fell to a newcomer at the neighboring clinic. That person spent 5 years on the Northwest frontline and returned with multiple promotions. By the time they retired, they were enjoying the benefits of a hospital director and had mentored several accomplished students. Afterward, many of my older colleagues deeply regretted not volunteering. "If I had known, I'd have gone even if it killed me," they lamented. "Director, I'll go. Sign me up." I raised my hand excitedly. The director turned to me, surprised. "The tasks are heavy, and time is tight," he said. After confirming my decision, he granted me half a day off to pack my belongings and say goodbye to my family. I had no immediate family left in this town, but my neighbors had always been kind to me, so I bought some groceries and meat, inviting Sarah and the others to my house for dinner. When Lucas and Anna returned, I had just finished setting the table. "Why did you make so much food today?" Lucas asked, looking at the spread with confusion. Before I could respond, Sarah and the others burst through the door, carrying festive-looking gifts. "Chloe, look what we brought," Sarah said cheerfully as she walked in. I stepped around Lucas to greet them. "Sister Sarah, Aunt Lila, you didn't have to bring anything. Your presence is enough. How could we come empty-handed when you're treating us to a meal?" Sarah teased. Then, with a knowing smile, she added, "Chloe, you seem so happy and are even hosting a feast. Did your marriage application with Lucas get approved?" Lucas's face immediately darkened at her words. I glanced at him briefly, then at Anna beside him. Her previously cheerful expression had drained of color. Sensing my gaze, Anna held her head and murmured, "Lucas, I have a headache. I think I'll go rest in the room." Lucas looked at her, unsure how to comfort her, and could only nod in agreement. The awkward interaction didn't go unnoticed by the others, momentarily cooling the atmosphere. But I said nothing and instead focused on getting everyone to sit down, eat, and drink. Soon, the lively chatter returned. Everyone assumed that Lucas and I were about to get married and began offering their blessings. Wishing you a lifetime of happiness. May you have children soon. They all toasted with warm congratulations. Lucas, however, looked increasingly uncomfortable. Finally, he found an excuse to call me outside. Standing in the faint morning light, his features were partially shadowed. Chloe, he began, his tone tense. Tell me, did the marriage application really get approved? I stared at him and lied. Yes, it did. Even though he should have expected this. Lucas's eyes widened in disbelief, as though it had come much sooner than he anticipated. I watched the discomfort spread across his face and feigned ignorance. The application was approved. Aren't you happy? Happy, he said, forcing the word through clenched teeth. You should be. I replied with a faint smile. After all, it was you who told your father you cared for me and wanted to marry me. Hearing me bring up his past words, Lucas's expression shifted. But Lucas, I continued, my tone growing colder. I'm not happy. Looking back at my life, the biggest mistake I ever made was marrying you. I returned his words from our previous life to him, word for word. Lucas stared at me in shock, unable to comprehend. Chloe, what are you saying? I've made myself perfectly clear. I replied. No, this can't be true. Lucas shook his head repeatedly, his expression shifting from disbelief to sudden realization. He looked at me as though he'd figured everything out. I see now. You're only saying this on purpose, aren't you? I didn't understand what he meant, so I remained silent, taking my silence as confirmation. Lucas grew smug. I knew it. There's no way you'd regret marrying me. You must be jealous because of what happened earlier when Anna kissed me. Right. He crossed his arms and gave me a knowing look. All right, Chloe. Anna has already explained that it was just a Western custom. Don't hold on to it anymore. I smiled without saying a word, which seemed to unsettle Lucas. I really just see Anna as a little sister, he said hastily. His little sister interrupted from behind. Lucas, your good little sister is here. Turning around, Lucas saw Anna standing with a suitcase in hand. He rushed over immediately. Anna, what are you doing? Her eyes were red, as if she'd been crying. She forced a weak smile when she saw Lucas. Lucas, you and Chloe are getting married. It's not appropriate for me to stay here anymore. I should move out. Move out? Where could you possibly go at this hour? Lucas asked, avoiding his gaze. Anna murmured, I have a friend. Lucas cut her off without hesitation. Who else do you know here besides me? Anna hesitated briefly, stealing a quick glance at me before continuing. Lucas, I wish you and Chloe a lifetime of happiness together. She took a deep breath, then pushed past Lucas with her suitcase and walked away without looking back. Anna, Lucas called after her, chasing her out the door. As he rushed past me, the wind of his movement carried his scent, just as it had in my previous life. Back then, on the day of our actual wedding, Anna had caused a scene, insisting she had to move out. Lucas had left all the guests who had come to celebrate, and ran after her. The difference this time was that he paused briefly before leaving. Chloe, he said, turning to me, wait for me to come back. Then his figure disappeared into the twilight. I returned to the house. Inside, Sarah and the others had clearly overheard most of what happened outside. Unable to hold back, Sarah commented, Chloe, that cousin of yours doesn't seem like an easy one to deal with. You should be careful. I calmly picked up a bite of food. She's not my cousin. She's Lucas's childhood friend. His little sister with no blood relation. The room fell silent, and everyone exchanged awkward glances. Once the guests left, I took out the bag I had already packed and walked out without a second glance. I left nothing behind in that house, except for the voided marriage application and that jar of snowflake cream. Meanwhile, Lucas caught up to Anna in the dim alley at the end of the street. Anna didn't say a word, only threw herself into his arms and sobbed uncontrollably. After she had cried herself out, Lucas finally spoke. It's too late to find a place to stay tonight. Why don't you come back with me? No, I don't want to go back. Anna protested, refusing no matter what. With no other choice, Lucas brought her to a guest house instead. Lucas, I'm scared, Anna said, clutching his sleeve as he tried to leave. Can you stay with me tonight? When Lucas turned back to look at her, he was met with her tear-filled eyes. For some reason, the image of me standing in the courtyard earlier flashed in his mind, my gaze cold, distant, and unfamiliar. He distinctly remembered that I never used to look at him like that. His thoughts grew chaotic, and he blurted out, "No, I have to go back." Anna was stunned, clearly not expecting such a quick rejection. She bit her lip, her demeanor shifting. "You're going back to see Chloe, aren't you? Of course. She's your wife now. You should go back to her. After all, I'm just your little sister with no real ties to you." Lucas hesitated, wavering slightly. Sensing her moment, Anna gave him a light push. "Lucas, don't worry about me. Go back so Chloe doesn't have to wait for you." That small push seemed to make up Lucas's mind. "You're right. A woman staying here alone isn't safe." He picked up an extra blanket from the room, laid it on the floor near the door, and declared, "I'll sleep here tonight." Anna had gotten what she wanted, but any further attempts were thwarted. Lucas held his ground and refused to cross the line. He didn't step onto her bed no matter how hard she tried. The next morning, Lucas took Anna out to find a place to rent. By the time everything was settled, it was already evening. As he thought about Chloe, guilt crept into his heart. Stopping by a small shop, he bought some of her favorite snacks. Calculating the time, he figured Chloe would probably be at home making dinner by now. Lucas pushed the door open, ready with a pre-planned explanation. "Last night, I took Anna to the guest house and was just about to come back when..." But he stopped mid-sentence. The kitchen was empty. There was no sign of Chloe anywhere. His brow furrowed, and he quickly turned to open her bedroom door. The room was spotless and orderly but completely empty. A strange uneasiness crept over him, spreading like wildfire. He searched the small house again, checking every corner and even going in and out of the courtyard twice. Finally, he approached the neighbor. "Sarah, Sister Sarah," Lucas called out, trying to sound calm. "Have you seen Chloe?" Normally, Sarah would greet him with a warm smile and a friendly tone. But today, her expression turned cold, as if she had seen something unpleasant. She quickly replied, "Haven't seen her," and retreated into her house. Lucas sensed something was off but didn't dwell on it. Finding Chloe was the priority. He went back inside the house, and this time, he noticed something on the table that had escaped his attention before. As he stepped closer, his entire body froze in place. On the table lay the voided marriage application and the unused jar of snowflake cream. Chloe's words from the night before echoed in his mind. "Lucas, I'm not happy. Looking back at my life, the biggest mistake I ever made was marrying you." It felt like a bolt of lightning had struck him, leaving his head buzzing. He muttered to himself, "How is this possible? How?" Even now, he couldn't believe Chloe's words were true. He vividly remembered the way she had looked at him the first time they met, her eyes sparkling, as if she had found a treasure. Someone who adored him that much couldn't just walk away. Lucas jumped on his bike and pedaled furiously to the office where they had submitted the marriage application. When he arrived and inquired, he was told that Chloe had taken the application back over 10 days ago. Learning that this wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, Lucas panicked. He got back on his bike and headed to the clinic, hoping to confront Chloe and ask her why. When he arrived, the head nurse looked at him, drenched in sweat, and said, "Mr. Lucas, are you looking for Chloe? She's already gone to the Northwest front line. Didn't you know?" Lucas shook his head, his body drenched as though he had been pulled out of water. Pushing his bicycle, he walked aimlessly down the road. "Mr. Lucas, did you find Nurse Chloe?" Several acquaintances passed by, all aware that he had been searching for her. Lucas, his face pale, shook his head. The others didn't seem surprised. After he had walked a little further away, they began whispering among themselves. Chloe was such a good woman, but he ruined it. Serves him right. What do you mean? You don't know? That Anna woman Lucas keeps introducing as Chloe's cousin? She's not her cousin at all. She's Lucas's beloved little sister. What? His little sister? And he brought her to their home? Isn't that just humiliating, Chloe? Exactly. It's outrageous. Hearing this as he doubled back, Lucas couldn't hold back and shouted, "What nonsense are you talking about?" The group flinched for a moment but quickly regained their composure. After all, they knew they weren't lying. Mr. Lucas, whether it's nonsense or not, you know the truth. You have a fiancé, yet you're fooling around with another woman. Don't think we didn't see you and Anna entering the guest house together and staying there all night. Lucas stammered. We're innocent. Innocent? How innocent can you be? Spending the night together in a guest house? One of them scoffed. A man like you doesn't deserve Chloe. They spat on the ground in disgust and walked away, leaving Lucas standing there, stunned. Days passed, and it gradually sank in. Chloe had truly left him. In the past, he never thought Chloe was that important to him. But now, whenever he saw someone picking persimmons, the memories would overwhelm him. Lucas often found himself lost in thought, recalling an image of Chloe climbing a tree, her sleeves rolled up. She sat high on a branch, holding a ripe persimmon and calling down to him, "Lucas, look, isn't this one bright red?" He would take a step closer and reply, "It's red." "What's red?" Anna's voice broke through his thoughts, pulling him back to reality. She was standing beside him, holding a lunchbox. Startled, Lucas glanced at her and asked, "Why are you here?" Anna smiled sweetly. "I came to bring you lunch." Lucas looked at the lunchbox in her hand, his expression hesitant. Having lived abroad for years, Anna's idea of a meal consisted of cold bread, boiled eggs, and a few salad leaves. Nothing like Chloe's steaming pork dumplings. "I've already eaten," Lucas finally said after some deliberation. Anna looked crestfallen. Before she could respond, the school principal appeared, calling out to Lucas, "Mr. Lucas, can you come with me for a moment?" Lucas followed the principal, and 15 minutes later, he emerged from the meeting looking troubled. Anna was still waiting outside. "Lucas, what's wrong?" she asked, hurrying to his side. He shook his head silently. When Anna tried to take his arm, he gently but firmly brushed her hand away. Soon after, news of the meeting began to spread. A parent had filed a complaint against Lucas, accusing him of improper behavior with women and claiming it could negatively influence the students. As a result, Lucas was disqualified from receiving an award for outstanding teacher performance. When Anna heard about it, she stormed into the principal's office, causing a chaotic scene in an attempt to defend Lucas. By the time Lucas arrived to stop her, the room was in complete disarray. "Anna," Lucas barked, expecting comfort. Anna looked at him with tear-filled eyes. Instead, she was met with his sharp rebuke. "What were you thinking? Who gave you the right to interfere in my affairs?" "But Lucas, I was only trying to stand up for you," Anna protested, her voice trembling with emotion. "I don't need your help," Lucas snapped. Anna burst into tears. Outside the office, teachers who had witnessed the scene began whispering among themselves. "So, that's the sister Lucas brought back from abroad," one muttered. "She's nothing like Nurse Chloe," another replied with a sigh. "Lucas's life is going to be tough from now on." Lucas overheard their comments. He hadn't realized before how highly others regarded Chloe. In their eyes, the woman he once found plain and ordinary was, in fact, exceptional. After the incident, Lucas was reassigned from teaching math to teaching physical education, giving him more time to think. And the more he thought, the more he found his mind drifting to Chloe. Her braids, her red floral jacket, the way she had looked at him with her clear, bright eyes the first time they met. The more he thought of Chloe, the less he thought of Anna. He convinced himself that if he waited long enough, Chloe would return, and everything could be salvaged. But Anna had no intention of waiting. One night, when Lucas was drunk and wallowing in his own misery, Anna climbed into his bed. The next morning, before the neighbors were fully awake, Anna staged a dramatic scene. She stormed out of Lucas's house, disheveled and crying, threatening to throw herself into the river. The scandal spread like wildfire, and Lucas's reputation was completely ruined. Left with no choice, he married Anna, far away on the northwest front line. "I knew nothing of this," I didn't have the time or energy to speculate about Lucas and Anna's ultimate fate. As the new year approached, I performed an emergency C-section on a mare struggling with a difficult birth. Among the group that came to thank me afterward was a doctor. After hearing about the surgery, he gave me a piece of advice that changed my career trajectory. "You've got steady hands," he said. "Being a nurse doesn't do you justice. You should consider pursuing surgery, if you ever get the chance. I hope to see you at the hospital in the capital." Before leaving, he handed me a few medical books. It felt like I had finally found my calling. I pored over those books again and again, committing every word to memory. In the days that followed, whenever a herder's cattle or sheep faced complications during birth, they would call on me to perform the surgeries. And so, life went on, day by day. My life now was the complete opposite of my previous one. I finally understood the meaning of freedom, living entirely for myself. I never thought about Lucas again. 5 years passed in the blink of an eye. My assignment at the Northwest Frontline came to an end, and I returned to the clinic I had left so long ago. The director, who had seen me off back then, personally came to pick me up. "Chloe," he greeted warmly. "Welcome back." Then, he handed me a transfer letter. "This just came in. It's from the hospital in the capital. They specifically requested you." Opening the letter, I immediately recognized the handwriting. It was from Dr. Du, the mentor who had changed the trajectory of my career 5 years ago. Over the years, I had stayed in touch with him, writing to him whenever I faced challenges or had questions. Despite his busy schedule, he always replied thoughtfully and thoroughly. That evening, my colleagues at the clinic organized a farewell and welcome back dinner for me at the state-run restaurant. After eating and drinking their fill, the conversation inevitably turned to the events of the past 5 years, particularly those involving Lucas and Anna. Since marrying Anna, it seemed Lucas's life had taken a turn for the worse. Not only had he lost his teaching position, a once stable job, he had recently secured work as a library assistant, only to lose that too. The reason? Anna had seen him speaking to a female coworker, flown into a jealous rage, and publicly attacked the woman, pulling her hair and shouting. The incident left Lucas humiliated and unemployed once again. Anna, emboldened by her pregnancy, faced no consequences and became even more brazen. Their family was now shunned by everyone in the area. Stories like this weren't uncommon. "If I were Lucas," one colleague said with a sigh, "I'd regret it so much by now." "Exactly. He let Chloe slip through his fingers," another chimed in, and several pairs of eyes instinctively glanced at me. I smiled lightly, unfazed, and continued eating. After the dinner ended and everyone had left, I heard someone call my name. Looking up, I saw Lucas standing across the street. It had been 5 years, but he looked like he had aged 20. His hair was streaked with gray, and his once straight posture was now slightly hunched. He stared at me, his eyes shimmering with regret. "Chloe," he said, his voice trembling. "I was wrong. I never should have said those things to you." In that moment, I realized he might have also been reborn. As for his apology, it wasn't just directed at me but also at the life he had ruined in this timeline. His expectations, shaped by his past life, had shattered. The price he paid had been far too steep, and the outcome far worse than he ever imagined. Before I could respond, Sarah appeared, and I turned to open the gate to my courtyard. "Lucas! Lucas!" Anna's shrill voice echoed from the alleyway. At the sound, Lucas's face twisted with frustration and weariness, as though her cries were a curse chasing him down. I never thought I'd see the day he looked at someone he once cherished so much with such disdain. As Anna came running after him, I turned and walked away. From behind, I heard her scream, "Lucas, are you here to see that whore Chloe? Let me tell you, as long as I'm alive, you'll never be with her. Never. If I have to die, I'll take you with me. Lucas, say you love me. If you don't, I'll jump right now." Her hysterical cries and the sound of their struggle gradually faded into the distance. Thought suddenly occurred to me. In our previous life, Lucas had left too hastily, and I never had the chance to tell him that Anna had a severe hereditary mental illness. Why hadn't it surfaced back then? Perhaps it was because, as a solitary woman basking in the glow of love, her symptoms had been kept at bay. I walked to the end of the road and looked up at the vast night sky filled with stars. Among the countless stars, one shone just for me. My future lay ahead, and it was full of promise.